We're ready to go. Are you a long introduction before we put on the board?
Forget it.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Forget it. I think you guys got the award for most inspiring banquet speech to get everyone to the workshop. So, you'll be sort of more emotional when you come more. In any case, again, you're the one who's going to do this. Keep in mind that there is a post here, and we're trying to get around it as much as possible, but there's still usually a room in the back if you have to. So I give you this point for the round.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much for coming. Actually, there are people behind it. This is a terrible spot to have this thing, isn't it? People can't see me. I don't think they can remote view me. Sometimes the eyes are just as good. I was just going to move this a little bit this way. I can't help everybody.
You've got to learn to see through posts, Courtney.
I mean, I can see you folks. I'm just trying to be helpful to you folks that are behind the post. I'll try this. You want to know what a remote viewing thing is like? I'll tell you. You're looking at me, right? I'm an image in your mind. You're seeing the light bounce off of me and going into your eyes. It's going into the ocular nerves, it's going into the brain. And we now know, not the remote viewing, but the neurologists have figured out, that there's a layer of cells on the brain, actually near the surface, in the front, where the ocular image is projected, literally like a screen. And the image that you're getting from me is being projected onto the screen. Now, your eyes are still open. Keep them open. While they're open, bring back the memory of the pencil and put it right up in front. See the nice yellow pencil with the number 2 on it and the Eberhardt label and the little metal band and the soft pink eraser and the sharp point? Notice that the pencil image is a bit translucent. You can see me through it, right? What had happened, as the neurologists have told us now, is that image is being brought from the, you might call it the hard drive of the brain, the memory of the brain, and being projected onto that same layer of cells, that same screen. But it's as if it's being projected with a projector that has a dimmer luminosity. The lumens of the bulb is dimmer. It's not as bright. You can see through it, but both images are on the same screen. The remembered and the visual ocular image. Now, the remote viewing image is also projected onto the same screen. It's a third image, and it's dimmer, and it's foggier, and it's fuzzier, and that's why it's so hard to see, and that's why it requires such training to discern it. And the whole procedures of remote viewing are oriented not around getting an altered state. You don't go out of body. It's shifting of awareness to that other image. The subspace mind, you may call it the soul, some people may call it the unconscious. I don't like the word unconscious, so that's been used a lot because it's very conscious. But some people call it, various different things. I call it the subspace mind because we know that it exists in subspace. And when we slough off these mechanical bodies, we're still there. It's like what Edgar Cayce said. Dying didn't make Aunt Millie one whit smarter. She's the same Aunt Millie she always was. She just doesn't have a body any longer. Well, what we used to hear about with Edgar Cayce and all these amazing things we now know is absolutely true. That there is a physical, mechanical body, but we are composite beings. We dwell within them. And there's an advantage to that. You can, being spiritual beings essentially, we are not physical beings having occasional spiritual experiences. We are spiritual beings having occasional physical experiences. And when we come into the physical realm, we have a particular physical experience. And we have all chosen to come in as human beings. We have found that there is no subspace police force that will prevent you from coming back and having another physical experience. It's a free will universe. So you were alive before you were who you are, And you will be just as alive after you are who you are. Thus, if you ever really worry about military spending, never, it's worth all the billions of waste just to have had that $20 million spent at Stanford Research Institute. They may not have known what they fully discovered, but they discovered the first laboratory proof positive that we are more than physical beings. It is not an out-of-body experience. You see, you don't go anywhere when you remote view. We found out that the physical properties of the soul, of the subspace mind, one of its physical properties is that it is omnipresent. It is all places at once. It is in that corner. It is in that corner. It is your subspace minds are all throughout everybody else. Thus, it's not a New Age metaphor to say we're all connected. It is literally true. Literally true. And it is not a New Age metaphor to say we're all brothers and sisters. We are literally connected from the same fabric. Literally connected. We happen to have our consciousness focused within these physical realms, but we now know that we have another part of ourselves that is not limited to the physical realm, and it can transcend time as well as space, with the same ease that which you walk across the street, once you're properly trained. And you may say, well, walking across the street is easy. Why does it take so long to learn how to remote view? A whole solid week of courses and a professionalization course that follows afterwards. And I say, hey, give me a break. You know how long it took you to walk across the street? I got a 4-year-old. It took him a whole year just to walk across the living room. It takes time to learn these things. Learning everything you take for granted now. For me, remote viewing is just that. It's just there. It's easy. But to get to the point where you have really constant accuracy, it's like anything else you learn. But it's not based on any talent. You could learn it, you could learn it, you could learn it, you could learn it, you could learn it. Anybody can learn it. Any normal, well-balanced human being can learn it. There's no thing about it anymore. What is the basic thing? Why did we figure it out? What's the basic trick? What's the basic fundamental thing that makes it work? Well, we all have cars, right? You went out and started your car, didn't you, this morning? Now, if you were with me, with my Dodge Omni 1984, still kicking, you know, you have a half a minute and you're still praying, I hope that battery doesn't give out. But it eventually kicks on. There's a delay with all physical things. Well, one thing we know about the mind-body or the subspace-body connection is that the body is a physical mechanical thing. And it has a delay before it reacts to something that the subspace mind knows instantly. The subspace mind knows absolutely instantaneously what 51112087 or whatever other random number you may use for that particular target, and then right after the session you throw it away. It's just used for that one session. The subspace mind knows immediately what that means. And you start doing the remote viewing procedures. There's 600 some odd things to do, and you're blazing through them like a bat out of hell, because there is a 3-second delay. The conscious, physical, electrochemical mind, we now know it takes 3 seconds to catch up with the information, to react, to grab the information that comes from the subspace mind and to distort it and to twist it around and to make it sound like something else. So what we do with the subspace mind physical body connection is we have all of these procedures that include sketches and everything else, and we blaze through them like a bat out of hell. Why? Because we got to keep a race. We've got to keep a 3-second pace going throughout the entire thing. Because the conscious mind is chasing us like a warrior out for the kill in order to grab that data, because it's been in control since you were born. And it likes being in control. And the subspace mind suddenly is starting to feed information and get it accurate down on the paper. So when you're done with the whole session afterwards, then you finally relax. That's when the remote viewer has the very pregnant moment and says, okay, what was that target? And then the monitor says, we just had you in the Galactic Federation headquarters. Oh, you're kidding me. That's right. What is that? And he looks around. Or we just had you looking at a gnat on the top of the Eiffel Tower. Or we had you in the Great Pyramid or the Great Wall of China. Or we had you looking at the Sphinx during the period of construction. And you get pictures and everything. And I got a whole bunch of pictures to show you. You don't have to believe me. There's one thing about science. You don't have to believe science. It's either true or it's not true. It's either true or it's not true. You don't have to believe me at all. I'm a scientist. I do what I do. I say what I say. But it's either true or it's not true. And if you don't believe what I say, if you say it's just not true, that's okay. You're entitled to that as well. And that's all right. That's actually quite good. And at some point, somebody else may say, boy, that really does sound true. Let me investigate further. But it's not something that I have to persuade you about. It's either true or it's not true. The fact that we're composite beings, we now know is a fact. Now, we also know that we can remote view across space and time. And there is apparently no limitations to how far we can go. We don't have any remote viewers at the Farsight Institute that have remote viewed outside of our galaxy. Give us a break. There's just so much in our galaxy we haven't figured out what to do. And also, it takes a lot of time and resources. People have always said, well, have you remote viewed this? And I said, do you know how many interesting targets there are that are on the queue for us to eventually do? But how could you not have remote viewed that? It's so important. I know it's important to everybody, but there are so many other things that are also important. And why does it always take time? Because you can't tell the person, I want you to look at the Great Pyramids and find out how they were made. You can't tell people to do that. You got to give them 5112087. Go find out what that is. Come back with complete sketches and diagrams and the whole thing of what it's all about. Well, if you told them it's a Great Pyramid, their mind is going to jump right in and say, oh, great, the Great Pyramid. Yes, sir, just like that, the Great Pyramid. And they're going to bring all the stuff from memory. So you can't tell them that. You just got to tell them a random number that you dug up just 2 seconds before the session started, give them a random number, have them do the whole session, and then tell them after the whole session what it's all about. It's much easier to do it that way. We don't do blind sessions because we're testing ourselves. It's just spectacularly easier to do the remote viewing under blind conditions, where the conscious mind just doesn't know what to do. Then you have to totally rely on the structure, totally rely on the grammar of the session to take you through to the end. You don't have anything else to rely on. No memory, nothing's worthwhile, so you just got to rely on the structure. So that's why we use the random numbers. It's not to test. Is to make it easy. You may say, boy, it's so hard to do it if it's blind. No, it's so easy. Once you know the procedures, if it's blind, that's all you want. If somebody asks me to do a session, the last thing I want to know is anything about the target. Oh, no, you told me about the target? Ugh, now what am I going to do? I got to keep that 3-second pace to such a rigorous thing. It's very, very difficult. But if you don't know anything about the target, hey, great, I'm there. Let me start. All right? So, but once you do these procedures, you can't tell the person that they're going to get a big fancy-dancy target every time they do it. So every other time they do a session, you're sending them off to the Great Wall of China or a gnat on the top of the Eiffel Tower or something like that, something that they have no interest in, but you have to do that regularly in order for them to not know what the next target is. If they know, oh, I know he's going to, if there's ever a remote viewer that says, I know the next target is going to be the Galactic Federation headquarters, that is the last target we will ever give that person. My director of instruction is so funny. He wanted to go to the Galactic Federation headquarters. He was originally trained by the military guys, and then reprofessionalized at the Farsight Institute. And then what we did is what he wanted most was he helped me with he was really great. He helped me when the book was in manuscript form on some particular aspects of consciousness that I needed some detailed information about. And he really wanted to go to the Galactic Federation headquarters. I mean, that was the place he wanted to go. I mean, that was the reason he got trained by the military guys in the first place. That was his whole thing. And every session we give him, he was hoping it would be that. And finally, I heard through the grapevine that a week before, or 2 weeks before, actually, he had mentioned that he had completely given up hope. He knows that we'll never give him that. And he was just getting so despondent and discouraged. And he was just taking another target and saying, okay, what'll this be? The Eiffel Tower, I'm sure, or whatever. So that's when we hit him at the Galactic Federation headquarters. Boy, did he have a pristine session. I mean, it was a wonderful thing. Everything was just drawn out. So the point is, we do everything blind. So the stuff I'm going to be showing you in the slides, under no conditions did we ever tell the person, you're going to go see the Grays today, dude. No. We give them, a tree in the middle of the Rocky Mountains, an ant nest outside my backyard. I mean, they'll give you anything you want, and when we slip them something that we really care about, it's when they least expect it. And then the monitors and the viewer and the other people that are in the room, well, not in the room, but elsewhere, we just hold our breath. What's going to happen? Because we want that information. So we don't give you an interesting target, one that we really want, until you're right on target with a whole bunch of other ones. And then when you least expect it, when you know this one's not going to be interesting, you've given up the ghost, whoosh, we give it to you. And we stand back and wait. What's going to happen? And that's when we get the information that's really good. Now, at www.farsight.org, one thing I want to emphasize here is when I say that, it's not like I'm selling it. Because remember, it's free. I'm not selling anything that's free. The information that we're getting at the Institute, we're putting up free. Our goal is honestly planetary. And if nobody clicks on it, that's okay too. We're still going to put the stuff up on the internet. It's just what we want to do. We have fun doing it. A lot of people are interested in it. It's a very active website. And it's going to be changing. It's now one of the very best, if not the best, website in the internet completely. And it's going to be changing dramatically from October 21st on. So if you think it's good now, I mean, everyone go home and click on it and then count down to October 21st. There are things that are happening that we can't tell you all about now, but we'll tell you about in October 21st. So the point, and there will be other things that are happening afterwards, and being remote viewers will know about them before everybody else knows about them, and we'll let people know about it at the right time. But we're not keeping back secrets, just that we love theater. I mean, why make a dull thing of it? We might as well present it in a way that's interesting to people. I mean, seriously, every good teacher is also a good performer. A good teacher is one that makes the subject matter come to life. I teach mathematics, calculus. I was a first and second year college calculus teacher, and my challenge when I went into that is make those derivatives come to life. I mean, you can either make it dull or you can make it really happy, really delightful. So the real thing is to make the subject matter delightful. So a little theory gets thrown into the whole thing, but we don't hold back for long. I mean, we can't. We're too excited by the information to hold it back, so we put it out. All right. Now, let me get on to this thing about Mars. I mean, when I say Martians, doesn't everybody sort of choke a little bit like, oh gosh, that one's hard. I mean, I can believe the remote viewing. I can believe the Greys. I mean, John Mack wrote about the Greys. I mean, Whitley Strieber wrote about the Greys. I mean, actually, Whitley Strieber has a new book coming out in January where he does talk about Mars. But and then you have David Jacobs talking about the Greys and so on. And, but Mars? Martians? That sort of makes you sink back and say, this really is a funny business. This guy really can't really be telling the truth. The reality is, we have so much corroborating evidence on this, it's just overwhelming. It's not a doubt anymore. Look, if there are no Martians, as an academic, I'm dead. I couldn't get a letter published with Dear Abby if there are no Martians. And we're not going to have to wait long. If I had put it was the Orions, it'll be in a next lifetime that I'd ever have to face up to the music. But when I say Martians, we're talking about 2 probes that are leaving this planet in November and December from our country, from the United States, going to arrive there in the middle of next summer. We have a Japanese probe that's following soon afterwards. There's a lot at stake. All right. If there are Martians, tell me about it. How could there be Martians? Greys we can understand. But Martians? Long, long ago, when dinosaurs roamed on Earth, there was an ancient Martian civilization. It was not so advanced. It was like the pyramid Egyptians of 3,000 years ago. It is interesting, to say the least, that the root of the word Cairo is Mars. Cairo means Mars. That's what the word means, its root. It's interesting that there's a face on Mars in the Cydonia complex, and there are pyramids in that same complex, and that right outside of Cairo, there is a Sphinx and pyramids. We'll find the connections as time goes on, but I suspect Zachariah Sitchin is not far off. But the real thing is, way back when dinosaurs were running on Earth, there was an ancient Martian civilization. I mean, look, just up to a few months ago, nobody in respectable science was even saying that there's life in our solar system. They were saying there's very little evidence that there's even planets around other stars. And we're an anomaly. What is that thing that Carl Sagan always says? He says something about, he quotes Brian Hume, he says something about great claims require great proof. Trouble with Carl Sagan is you can put the proof right in front of his eyes like this, and he says, great claims require great proof, and you put it again a little closer, great claims require... Some people just refuse to see it. The point is that when we have a situation where we use remote viewing data that's sufficiently reliable to risk men and women's lives on the battlefield, this is a very highly classified technology till just recently, but it's sufficiently reliable for these people to say, you're going out there and risking your life based on this information. If it's that reliable, then we then can look at situations such as Mars and we'll then begin to understand it. And to begin to understand what's happening with us now in relation to that. Long before there was an ancient Martian civilization, this would have been very hard to swallow at any time. But the reality is, just a few months ago, they announced that there was a meteor that crashed, and it had fossil evidence of microbes that were on Mars, on a meteor that crashed in Antarctica, or was it Arctica? It was Antarctica, right? And these little fossil evidence gave evidence that there was life on Mars at one time. Just a day before that, you had the entire scientific community saying there's no evidence of life anywhere. And then one day later, everybody's saying, well, there might also be life on Europa. How things change. And just now, if you read the newspaper over the last couple of months, now they're saying now there's evidence of planets in almost every star system. The reality is that there was life on Mars. The only question is, how evolved did it get? And if the meteor came from a couple billion years ago, 15 billion years ago, then how far did it go before it was finally snuffed out? The remote viewing data is very clear on this. Replicated to the point of exhaustion by different remote viewers under totally blind conditions. The statistical probability of these people saying the same thing under those blind conditions, given the controls that we use at the Farsight Institute, goes way off the scale of any statistical chart. The statistical chart doesn't exist that tells us the minute probability of that. The point is that this Martian civilization had a technology equivalent to our ancient Egyptians 3,000 years ago, the Pyramid Egyptians. It was destroyed by a holocaust, not of its own making. A planetary holocaust is basically one of those asteroids, comets, a planetary body that passed by, disrupted the atmosphere, waves got started in the atmosphere started to dissipate. And we now know that wherever there are beings, they organize themselves. If we were locked in this room within 15 minutes, somebody would be saying, who's going to sneak out of the window to get a Pizza Hut? Wherever there are beings, we organize ourselves. And we now know from the remote viewing data that there is a very vibrant, organized community of life in the galaxy. Well, they witnessed the Martian collapse. They sent in a rescue team. We remote viewed it. The rescue team was composed of those little short guys with the wraparound eyes called the Greys. This time they wore white uniforms and insignia. Very interesting that the insignia has a little bit of a snake on it. Very not that dissimilar from the American Medical Association stuff. And you say, well, how could that happen? Until you find out the historical origins of that little insignia from the American Medical Association dates way back to the Egyptian times. Okay, well, the real point is that the Greys actually went in there and I don't know what they did. They packed up, somehow rescued. Packed up, we saw them put them into bucket. You saw them rescue a whole bunch of Martians. How many? All, many, most? I don't know. Many. And the Greys have a technology that spans time as well as space. They can go across 1 billion years of time with the ease that you walk across the street. How could that be, you say? Well, heck, we can already remote view across time. We can remote view John F. Kennedy's assassination. You can remote view anything, the past, present, or future. And we're using electrochemical minds, so it's only a matter of some time before the physicists drag our spirits, our souls, and our bodies into the laboratories and develop gizmos, real gizmos with dials that can do the same thing. Well, the Greys just have gizmos that can transcend time as well as space. We already have biological gizmos. We'll eventually have technological gizmos. And the point is that when they transcended time and space, they brought the Martians up to the current time period. I don't know why, but the Greys like the number 3. Humans, Martians, Greys. And they brought the Martians up to the current time period and rescued them and brought them here. And now we know that the Martians are here. They're on planet Mars and some are on here, on Earth. And they're very happy to have been rescued. And there's a few 100,000 of them still on Mars, in caverns, tunnels, underneath. And they are very happy to have been rescued, but really sort of ticked off that they were rescued the way they were rescued. It's sort of hard to bite the hand that feeds you, but if you're rescued, you're rescued. But the point is, if they were brought to this planet 150 years ago, they'd be running this place by now. But brought to this planet at the current time period, when the entire planet is occupied by a species that has more human protoplasm on it than any species had ever occupied this planet, more than the dinosaurs' protoplasm, more than anything. And we cover every place, a fully populated planet with a birth rate right out of the sky. And then we're also hostile, territorial, aggressive, and we have movies about invasion from Mars. It's not the best scenario, folks. But they're between a rock and a hard place. They have now been bootstrapped genetically to be able to live in our higher gravity conditions. They have technology that allows them to fly shuttles, very fast, good spaceships, about 150-year technological advantage over us right now. They can get back and forth from Mars and Earth in a flash of a second, but they do not have interstellar capabilities. They do not have intertime capabilities. Otherwise, they could go back to Mars before the Holocaust and stop it from happening, and then go back. They don't have those abilities. They gotta come here. There ain't no other way to go. They must come here, and they're facing us. Now, listen to it this way. How are they going to get here? Do they have expectations of us? No, they don't have expectations. They're not asking what we're to do. They're just there. They just have no choice. Now, what would you do if you were in their situation? Now, to rescue a culture, what do you rescue? Well, you could say, well, why don't they just get born into our bodies? Since we are composite beings, let them be composited with us. Let them be born as humans. Have you rescued the Martian culture? No, you have a new Frenchman. That's it. If you're going to rescue the Martian culture, you got to rescue the culture. That's what it is. The theater, the dance, the history, the memory, everything. That part is being transferred slowly to this planet in villages, various places. We located a few, actually one, not too many, but at least found one. And these beings, up until, I can't tell you everything, but you'll see it soon. Tune in, October 21st. These beings have had their memory repressed so that they don't know who they are. They were born into physical beings, into physical bodies. And in those physical bodies, tons of memories are there. The abductees, or the experiencers, as some people like to call them, have tons of those experiences where they get abducted by Greys in the middle of the night. The Greys do all types of procedures with them and then give them a little lecture and a talk, and then, by the way, you're not going to remember any of this until the right moment, and then we'll flick it on. You've heard that stuff. Well, the Martians have the same ability to do that. Hide those memories until the right time. Why? Protect them. It's not very safe to run around on this planet saying you're a Martian. Protect the beings. Okay? All right. Similarly, that's not going to work if you just have Martians in villages. You got to have some people that know everything, that fly around in the ships to make sure everybody in the villages are safe. You got to have a processing center. Well, the villagers, we're not locating. We're not putting it in the book. They're defenseless. But the processing center is underneath Santa Fe Baldy. It's a small, rounded mountain outside of Santa Fe in a national park, and it's very bad to have an underground processing center underneath Manhattan. Too much business. But the only thing they have to worry about is backpackers. And they've got the same technology that the Greys have in terms of being able to move right through physical matter, so they don't have any tunnels. They just take those ships, they're on the radar screen, there they are, and then whoosh, they flick it, they're off the radar screen, they smash right through the mountain and rematerialize underneath in a hangar. We've seen it countless times with remote viewing. It's not that long before we know how to do that trick, folks. The military's worrying about that already. How can you be on the radar and off the radar? How can you go right through things? They would love to know that stuff. We'll eventually figure out how that stuff is done. The point is, they have the technology to do that, to come here. So what is actually happening is there's a processing center here. There's probably a few. We've located one definitely in one spot. We know exactly where it is. There are some villages. And there's a whole bunch of people still living back on Mars. It's not going to cause a population problem. Hey, they fill up a nice size, moderate sized city if they came here. We're not talking billions. We're talking a few. But the level of consciousness change, the paradigm busting stuff that's going to react when that stuff hits. Now you have to understand, we already know something's happened. We already sent up, the Russians sent up the Phobos 2 probe. We sent up the Viking stuff, but the Viking stuff that went to Mars was very low resolution. It was a Kodak Instamatic camera. The Phobos 2 ship that the Russians sent up, the Soviets sent up, was quite sophisticated, and it was going towards a very a sensitive target, apparently. Phobos, apparently something was on it. The last picture is well known that it shot back. It was of some light thing like a ship approaching it at high speed. What most people don't know that the last telemetry that was received was an energy pulse that went through the ship. That was the last telemetry that came through from the Phobos 2 project, from the Phobos 2 satellite, from the probe. The Mars observer was sent up by us, and the remote viewing data was very clear on that as well. Both the Mars observer and the probe were knocked out by an ET ship as they approached Mars. The Mars observer was not blown up the same way that the Phobos 2 was blown up. Apparently they learned. The last picture of the ship approaching wasn't so good. The energy pulse being recorded wasn't so good. So how did they blow up the Mars observer? With a slug. Made it look like a meteor, just a physical cannonball. Low-level technology works wonders at some points. The heck with the laser beam, folks. Let's just pound it with a rock. They blew it up. Now, we've got 2 more probes going up at the end of this year. Actually, next month is one, and the month after that is the next one. In the middle of summer, one's supposed to land on July 4th of next year. Now, if you're an ET, and you saw a high-resolution spy satellite coming in your direction, and your only defense, meaning they're not interested in conquering this place, they just want to make a living, and if your only defense was secrecy, do you really allow that spy satellite to come in from a society that has a whole bunch of people in the government and the society that knows that ETs exist, but they refuse to acknowledge it openly and send spy satellites right out to the neighboring area? A schizophrenic society that has one piece of knowledge that they won't admit, and then they send out probes as if that piece of knowledge doesn't exist? Would you really allow a nut to send a high-powered satellite in your direction? Piece of technology in your direction? No. You'd turn it off, wouldn't you? We have not remote viewed what's going to happen to the 2 probes. But if I was guessing, I would say the highest probability is that both of those things will be shut down just like the past ones have shut down. It'll probably be a message that'll be sent. Hey, look, if you're going to send something to Venus, go ahead. But if you're going to send something to our backyard, I mean, there's people living here, you got to ask first. You got to talk. If you don't talk, we don't talk. Their best secrecy is, their best safety is in secrecy. And unless we actually leave the realm of denial and actually say, okay, who are you? What's going on there? Then we are in that situation where we have to actually make sure it's not them. It's the problem. It's never been them that's the problem. It's us. And it's not because we're bad. We have to understand. We're different. We're in those special genetic bodies that emphasize the 5 senses: taste, touch, sight, hearing, smell, sound. The 5 senses. It is like one of those boom boxes pounding in your ears. The 5 senses swamp any feeling of the soul, any feeling of the subspace mind. And in order to perceive it, you need specialized procedures like TM Cities program, remote viewing, stuff at the Monroe Institute. You need all these extra things in order to even know that the soul exists. Otherwise, you live a whole 100 years and you never even know you're going to live after you die. You hope it's true, but you don't know it's true. Well, we have a real bad problem, and it's best represented by our scientific community. Because our mainstream, by the way, it's now been surveyed by a legitimate source. A majority now of our normal scientists now, when surveyed, say that they do think something called telepathy exists. So we're making dents. But in general, there's a real problem with mainstream science, especially with psychops type sciences. You know, the Committee for the Scientific Investigation for Claims of the Paranormal. They got a real problem. But a lot of other scientists have a similar problem. There is no evidence of telepathy, no evidence of clairvoyance, no evidence of anything paranormal, no evidence of ETs, no evidence of anything. Well, let's take telepathy, for example. No evidence of that no matter what you show them. No evidence of anything no matter what you show them. And then you say, okay, so they say there's no evidence. But if you're a good spy, you follow them around. Just follow them around and you'll see 9 out of 10 of them will walk with their entire families down on one day of the week to a place of worship, and they'll close their eyes and they'll talk telepathically to one of their non-physical beings. They're nuts. They have no being. They have no right. Or actually, they have no. That's not the word, right? There's no justification for them to be in any place of worship if they do not even allow the possibility that there is something else. Otherwise, they're doing something that they say Monday through Friday can't exist. Then why are they there? They know there's a problem on a very deep level, and on some deep level, they just block it out and go. So the point is, we are an entire society like that. And we send out probes and say there's no life out there. Then we send out probes to discover the life. If there's no life, why are we sending out probes to discover the life? So the point is, and we have a whole governmental situation that's, and I'm not complaining about the government. The government has a very, very tough problem in front of it. In 1947, when the military came, President Truman said, hey, look, this is your options. Roswell happened. We remote viewed it. It did exactly happen. We can even tell you where the wreckage is. I mean, it's not lost. It's still around. But the point is, it happened. And when it did happen, the military comes to the president and says, well, look, this is your options. They're here. It busts every single thing we know about all religion, philosophy, science, anything. It's different. They're technologically superior to us to the point where we can't even see the end of it. And they may be doing some things to our citizens at night that we don't know if they really want to have happen. And we're completely defenseless. Oh, and by the way, Mr. President, if you want to get on the radio or the television, you can add one final thing. You can tell people that they can panic at their own discretion. Whatever they feel like, it's okay. What would you do if you were president? You'd say the same thing that Truman and Eisenhower and everybody else said. I cannot go on the media with that message. There has got to be an upside to it. I've got to be able to tell people what next. I can't just tell them we're defenseless. You can't do it. The only thing the president had, the only option the president ever had was to say, get more information. So one of the real reasons for Cosmic Voyage is to supply that other information to the populace, as well as to other sources that were interested. More information was discovered in Cosmic Voyage and now through the Farsight Institute studies that we're putting up on the internet that's ever been known. And we're just putting this information up, transforming the populace, so that when the time comes for us actually to lift our heads out of the sand like that proverbial ostrich and finally look up and say, okay, you've been flying under our noses for the longest time, we finally admit we are not alone in this universe, galaxy, or most surprisingly, even our own solar system. And let's talk. That won't be such a shock. It won't be such a big thing. Look what happened when they discovered life on Mars with a meteor. Now, it would have been a big deal a few years ago. I mean, really a big deal, wouldn't it? Eventually, it got onto the front page in the New York Times on the left side. That's not the lead article.
That's right.
Life on another planet's been discovered. It got onto the front page of the New York Times finally as the second most important article. The first was some bureaucrat talking about something, some politician saying, you know, we hope peace in the Middle East comes quicker. And Life discovered the first of its kind off on the left-hand side, which is not the lead side. The lead side is on the right-hand side of the front page. Okay? The point is that we're changing slowly as a society. We're starting to accept things. We're starting to understand things. We're starting to know that life is much more complicated out there than we used to think. With regard to the grays, before I get into this, we've already talked about the Martians to some extent. Things are happening with the Martians. There's a lot of change. They're not happy campers. They have to leave Mars. They have to go. They can't stay there forever. As far as that's concerned, they're dead. That planet is dead. They gotta go. They gotta get off. And there's no other place for them to go. They must come here. When we have remote view the Martians, and then I'll get back to the grays. When we have remote view the Martians, we find a bureaucratic tactical elite that is trying to keep everything going. Everybody back on Mars alive, keep food going in, shuttles back and forth, keep the processing centers going on Earth, and the villages on Earth, keep them secret and keep them operating. And then when they have the locations on Earth, for example, we see kids on Mars and on Earth. Lots of kids. And underneath Santa Fe Boulder, you not only have a hangar and computer terminals and a lot of high-tech stuff, you also have, believe it or not, a nursery. And the early remote viewers that went in there, and we've sent lots of remote viewers in there, under totally boring conditions, double blind, single blind, every type of blind you can imagine, we sent them in. When you actually go in, you see the kids and they're sick. Now, the first thing we said was, oh no, they got bugs, they got viruses, bacteria, Martian bugs. Of course, we were not medically trained. We were just remote viewers. You can perceive anything, but you have to understand what you're perceiving. So finally, one of our original four at the Farsight Institute was a medical doctor who was trained originally by one of the retired military guys, and then we professionalized at the Farsight Institute. And when he last suspected it, we sent him into the nursery. We sent in a human doctor to examine the kids under totally blind conditions. Sure enough, he found the hangar, he found the ships, he found, these are Martians. He found the hallway, he walked down there and said, there's a nursery down here. And then he said, then he went in and he examined the kids and found out what was wrong. Well, we were all wrong about that. We weren't doctors, we didn't know what was wrong. They don't have any viruses. They don't have any bacteria. They have technology that solves all that problem. They have stress-related diseases. They've got skin falling off their, like flaky skin, hives, stuff like that. They're in prison. They're underneath a tunnel. And the moms are worried stiff about them. And the dads are worried and trying to get all information about them, keep supplies going and stuff like that. They're just trying to live. And the kids, they should be up on the streets kicking footballs, playing with Barbie dolls. They should be out and looking at the sky. And they're in prison. And they got stress-related diseases. And the kids on Mars are no better. They got to get off. In fact, in Mars, it's worse. They're in miserable conditions on Mars. I mean, miserable. You see people go in there, viewers go in there, and they start having images of concentration camps and prisons and things like that. It's just awful, the emotions that the Martians are under. Bad situation, folks. They got to come. They got to come out. And they can't wait till the next life or the life after that. They got to come in the near future. They can't wait forever. We're not talking about the year 2200. We're talking about soon, the flotilla, which we actually reviewed it. The flotilla is coming. Let me tell you about that flotilla, and then we get onto the Greys. We've reviewed that a lot. They're not coming before the humans invite them. They're not coming until the humans actually make contact. But the flotilla, when you go into the future, you can remote view the future as easy as you can the past. The only time I ever almost lost it emotionally, with the viewer feeling that I just almost couldn't shake, was when I remote viewed the flotilla coming off of the surface. And you do a collective deep mind probe. What is this? It looks like Mars. It's red. It looks like Mars. There's ships all over the place. And there's people in it, packed in there like cattle. I mean, they're just packed in there. And you do a deep, collective deep mind probe. You go right into the center of their minds. And you get the incredible joy, the feeling of liberation, coming to the promised land. It's right off the scale. I mean, the emotions are just they just break the hulls of the ships. I mean, it's just overwhelming, the relief, the joy, the happiness of them coming, finally being released from the prison and coming here. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. The Greys are not much better situation either. They have all this technology. They can walk across time. They can walk across space. They can do spins around us, but they're not happy. In their homeworld long ago, they were not that different from us. They were telepathic. They did not have the particular genetic mix that we have that really dampens that down. But they were selfish, greedy, egotistical, lusty, everything. Right off the scale. They burned themselves right off that planet. An environmental catastrophe that was their own making. It wasn't like the Martians where something else came by and destroyed it. The Greys did it to themselves. And they went in, they buried themselves. They went underground because they had nowhere else to go. The surface was uninhabitable. And then a couple things started happening. They started to say, well, let's start playing with our genes so that we can start at least adapting. We need larger eyes. Large wraparound eyes. There's not much light down there. It's hard to dig tunnels. It'd be nice if we were a little shorter. By the way, now that we're smaller, it's hard to give birth. We better start worrying about how to give birth in tubes, canisters. I mean, the heads don't have much space to come out of those vaginas. It's very difficult. Giving birth is tough. So let's have little bitty, teeny weeny fetuses extracted and put into canisters and then grown up. Oh, by the way, since we're at it, why don't we solve the problem that started it? I mean, we were lusty, greedy, selfish. We burned ourselves off our own planet. We didn't care about the future. Let's solve our genes. The genes of the mind. When you have a happy thought, you have happy molecules that are created. When you have a sad thought, you have sad molecules. Ever wonder why when you get sad in a bad mood, it takes a while for the thing to dissipate even when the circumstances change? It takes a while for the molecules to clear out. That's why having a good exercise, like a jog, helps. It clears, literally, physically clears those sad molecules away. The point is, when you have a stimulus, you have molecules that are created to react to that stimulus. And the Greys said, well, let's solve that. And what they did is they created electrochemical machines, their own minds, genetically changed them so that they would have the same electrochemical response to absolutely every stimulus that occurs. That's why they're so spark-like when you interact with them. They have the, no matter what you do with them, you kick them in the pants, you slap their face. If they lie, just slap their face. They're terrified of us because they're small and weak. But the point is, they do anything. Actually, they're not so weak, but they're small. And the point is, no matter what you do with them, you insult them or anything, it's the same mentality. The same single molecule is being released from the brain. And they said, well, we solved that problem. They had a collective nervous breakdown. And they destroyed their ability to have those thoughts, to have those feelings. And they said, now we're going to evolve in the spiritual direction as fast as possible by getting rid of the physical problems. But then they ran into a cul-de-sac. They realized that there was a limit to how much they could evolve spiritually. They couldn't get the full range of spiritual experiences that other people had, other beings had that they admired out there. And they said, well, we had to have a wider variety of our responses back. And they were terrified of going back to their old genes. Remember, they can move through time? So they could go back to their own genes? Those are the genes that got them in trouble in the first place. They had a collective nervous breakdown. They can't go back. They're terrified of that. If they could feel terror, that's it. That's the epitome of terror, to go back to their old self. We now found that there not only is a galactic federation, there is really an organization. It's no Star Trek joke. There really is an organization. An organized body representing many, many, many worlds. The Greys are members in very good standing. They are not outlaws. They are not terrorists. They're sick, in need, and they have a very altruistic project. They have served the Federation many, 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 if years make sense, for a long period of time. And they finally applied to the Galactic Federation for permission to come here, where the gene pool on our planet is extraordinarily rich, to borrow some of our genes, to get some of our genes. They don't want our whole genes. By the way, they got the grant. It's like getting a National Science Foundation grant. They got permission. They were allowed permission. They're almost comical in the way that they ask permission for things. And then they come here and they start abducting people. Well, that isn't asking permission. Well, when we actually remote view people that are having the so-called abduction, say a woman, happens to men too, but let's say a woman, she's on a table inside a gray ship, being lifted up out of her bed in the middle of the night, having fetuses brought in and out, gynecological procedures done, the whole thing, by Spock-like creatures who are looking down at her like this, and you go into her mind, into her conscious mind, and it starts right off the scale. There was immediately break it. Pandemonium, chaos, horror, fear, terror, everything. But the remote viewer can go deeper. You go deeper to the subspace mind, the soul. And you find, in every case we've looked at, there may be cases where it's not like this, but we stopped doing it because it got to be boring. We had other things to do. In every case we looked at, there was ecstasy, fulfillment of purpose, reason for being. And we said, that does not make sense. And then you go back in time to find out what the problem is. And you find them before they were born, before they were physical beings. And we saw the altruistic, and they saw the altruistic project that the Greys were involved in, the need that the Greys had, and the outcome. Remember, time really doesn't exist. It's not a New Age metaphor. I'll tell you about that in a second. But the point is, they wanted to participate, and they knew full well that in our genetic makeup, they would not remember the agreement to participate. And the Greys, what can they do? They asked permission for it first, and they said, would you like to do this with us, to help us? And they say, yeah, we'll do it. You just go ahead and abduct me in the middle of that lifetime, and I'll help. And you don't remember it. And the Greys are holding you down and saying, I'm sorry, but you did give us permission to do this. Like hell, I gave you permission to do this. Take that. And what can you do? They're trying the best they can. You remember it one day, you gave us permission, really. And then so on like that. Well, the point is, they're between a very difficult rock and a hard place. Now, why don't they just get born as humans? If they want our genes, why don't they take the whole ball of wax? Well, the reality is they consider us a dysfunctional species, a little bit too much like that. They don't want to be humans. They don't want the aggression, the fear, the territoriality. That's what got them in trouble in the first place. But they want the nurturing, the helping, the loving, the caring. They want all those genes. And since we can remote view into the future as easily as we can remote into the past, could we ever have not done it? Let's see what happens. So we looked to see what the outcome of the project was. Folks, let me tell you that that is one of the most beautiful experiences anyone can ever have. If you look at the Greys in the future, the products of half them and half us, we are their parents. If you look at that project, what it comes out, They are the most beautiful species I have ever seen. They succeed. They get all the good genes and all the bad ones that cause us to fight and be territorial. They left them behind. They're the type of people that you want across the street when your child is walking out to the bus station and you need to borrow a cup of sugar. They're the type of beings that will make sure your kid gets to the bus and they'll have a cup of sugar ready for you. They are the most, when you actually go into a deep mind probe with those beings, and you understand when you do the grays, they know you're remote viewing from the get-go. They know you're coming before you even get there. With you remote view a human, they don't know you're there. Unless you're a very, very, very sensitive natural psychic. Most humans don't know that you're being remote viewed. But with the grays, they knew you were going to do it on Thursday before Thursday even came. They knew you were coming. And it's a really weird experience to actually remote view grays, because when you remote view grays and you like land in a ship, and you're inside in some of the blind conditions, and you remote view the ship, and then and I'll show you some results similar to this. You're inside the ship and you're looking around, you're saying, my Lord, there's grays around here. They do a really weird thing. I guess they're a little bit into theater too. They tend to all turn around at the same time and look at you. You've been discovered. And when the military actually did this, they were the ones who actually first did it. They were really quite frightened when it actually happened. And they actually cut off the session and pulled the viewers back, like thinking that they were reeling them in on a string. Cut it off, we'll be discovered. Sort of funny, actually. But the reality is, the grays have this ability, and we're now at the very verge of actually understanding it ourselves, understanding the full realm of this entire thing. What time is it your time?
8 o'clock.
What's that? 10:30. And that means I'm halfway through. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just keep me in time, because I'm on Atlanta time. I'm looking at 12:30. What time do you folks have? Okay. All right. I want to make sure there's enough time for the slides. I have more to tell you, but I want to make sure I tell you and also leave room for the slides, because the slides are really, they're weight in gold. Okay. Now, let me go back to www.farsight.org. Why is this important? Well, remote viewing's one way of getting information, and we really believe it. We really know it's true. We have other things happening to us. I didn't tell you this, but there are other things happening to us. We have also visitations that are happening. We have situations where the grays show up in the middle of the night, wake certain people that are associated with our group up, and talk. Actually, not talk, thoughtful talk. Tell us things to do and things like that that's going on. But something happened to me early on in the project. You want to know the most interesting things to show you how connected we are to this remote viewing stuff? A gray can wake us up at 2 o'clock in the morning and tell us X, Y, and Z, and we don't believe it till we remote view it. That's how bad it is. I mean, it can materialize. It's not like hypnotically regress. They wake you up and they sort of say, and they're physically sort of a little transparent, but you can still see them. It's clear as day. They can tell you stuff. And as a group, we say, we've been in our board meetings. We actually have board meetings now. When we actually have board meetings, we actually sit around. We're going to have to find out if that's true. Let's remote view that. That's how connected we are to the remote viewing. Let me tell you where the Farsight Institute started. It started with just me. Then there were 3 others. They got trained by the military guys, different ones. And then they were working out of my house. And then we didn't have a secretary, but we had an answering machine. And then we had a computer system. And we started offering courses. Folks, we haven't made any money on this thing. You should see the shoes that I wear when I teach at Emory. These are my interview shoes. My socks are the same socks I bought in 1993. We're not making lots of money on this thing. It's not that it's wrong to make money, but we're taking all the money we have and pumping it right back in to the Institute. We now have 4 full-time employees. We've got a webmaster, we've got a secretary. I mean, she's actually there 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. I mean, we have nice brochures. We have a state-of-the-art, the planet's best website. We're using it as our planetary search. So you see, any single place that you ever gave a lecture, you're limited to only that one spot and the people that come. But with the internet, it's bigger exposure than any television station, than any radio station. It's everywhere. You can pick it up in Timbuktu, you can pick it up in Los Angeles, you can do anything. And every year it's getting more and more. And in December, they're going to start selling televisions. And virtually every television that's sold in December will have internet connectability. So whenever you hook up your cable to the television, they'll come with a remote. And you see what television show, and you have www.farsight.org. They're going to have cable modems attached to all the TVs. So everybody's going to be having this stuff. So it's very important that we establish ourselves on the internet. So what we're taking, we started out with the Far Side Institute, and we're ratcheting it up slowly to a university level, to a planetary university, to the idea where people can get courses, lectures, all free. You don't have to sign up. You just click it with the mouse. Well, the ETs apparently like the idea. They keep waking us up in the middle of the night. I won't say who, but different people up and sort of telling us what should be on the internet, what to do next. And look, I want to tell you, we're no longer one-sided in the sense of just saying, hey, look, okay, are there ETs or are there no ETs? Forget about that. We know there are ETs, and we bought into the whole thing that it's an altruistic project, and we want to actually help move the species into the daylight rather than leaving everything in the nighttime. And so what we have now is a situation where we're using the internet to literally promote the education of, not the agenda of, but the education of not just consciousness and our existence, but also life out there. And we're getting lots of input from these other sources. Now, understand that whenever we say we get input from the other sources, we always check it with remote viewing. Remote viewing is the only thing we'll actually put our cash on. What I mean by cash is not cash, but where we actually hold something solid. If we remote view it and do it under blind conditions and many people get the same results out of it, then we say, under the controls that we use, that it's actually there. All right, now, the planetary reason for the Farsight Institute and www.farsight.org. It's dangerous to move the human population, given the particular genetic mix. Like at any stampede, you go into a herd of buffalo and fire off a shot, you don't know where they're going to run. The human population, it's not just an easy matter. You just can't, they're passive now. They're watching the ships fly by. They're letting the abductions occur. They're reading the Farsight webpage. They're watching science fiction shows. They're doing whatever they're doing, but they're not doing anything but watching. You move the human species from the passive corner into the assertive corner, where they actually start doing stuff. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. It's a dicey thing. The entire galaxy we now know is watching. This is the biggest show on this side of the galaxy. That's no joke. What are the humans going to do at the moment of awakening? Are we going to flip out, go territorial, aggression, send off those bombs, protect? When Star Wars the Star Wars technology no longer became useful because the Soviet Union collapsed. You know what some of the major pushers of that technology said? No problem. Point the missiles up. I can't tell you the names, but some of the very biggest names said no problem. Point the missiles up. It can go either way, folks. There are divisions. There's a polarity that's forming in our society. And the role of the Farsight Institute is not to side with any one group. You see, if people want to continue with that denial, that is a legitimate option for free choice. If people want to be in the aggressive corner and be hostile, that is a legitimate option of free choice. We live in a free choice universe. If people want to hold out a opening hand and actually join the community of worlds and help as we've been helped, that is also a free choice. But it is not the role of the Institute to say, you must drop your fear, drop your aggression, hold your hand out, accept the refugees, and all live happily ever after. The role of the Farsight Institute is to explain the consequences of all the different actions and not to condemn them. This is what happens if we keep on with the denial road. This is what happens if we go on the regression road. This is what happens if we go on the diplomacy road. The explanation. And let people decide. They literally have the right to decide. It's their evolution. It's your evolution. It's our evolution. And that's the meaning, the mission behind the Farsight Institute. To explain about us, not to sell us into a galactic world, a community of worlds, but to explain the reality of the complexity that we face so that we can make the choices and to let the information get everywhere. What if somebody doesn't have a computer? Doesn't matter. They pick up a newspaper in the morning and the newspaper editors do have a computer and they're looking at the page. They turn on the TV and the TV stations have a computer and they're looking at the page. It's affecting people all over, different groups all over. In some way, the information is percolating out. and we're putting out the information as fast as we can. We now have 4 employees. A year from now, hopefully, well, actually, tonight was the meeting of our first teacher training course. We have 9 new teachers coming in. These are people that have gone through the introductory Farsight Voyager course, completed the Farsight Seer professionalization course. They've been remote viewing, depending on when they've been doing this, for actually since the beginning of our classes. They've done more remote viewing than almost anybody's ever done. They're great. And they're coming in for a solid week of teacher training. And then the week after that, all 9 of them, apparently, are going to be hanging around in the Farsight Voyager course when myself and my director of instruction are doing it. There's going to be just about more teachers than there are students. About an equal number, actually. There's going to be an enormous amount of people. The energy that you get when you have all these people. If you have one teacher, you just seen it when I first started out. 5 students showed up in my first class, and I was teaching them. And they talk about skeptical. But at the end, nobody was skeptical. It was so great. About the 4th day in, one of the sessions was Louis Farrakhan's Million Man March. Send him there. Why not? And then we went around the room and reviewed everybody's work. And one final skeptic, who just was a skeptic till the end, when he finally got to the last person, we reviewed the last person, and everybody had interesting things, crowds, images of Washington, D.C., black people. And then finally the last person, with sketches and everything, described the entire march. Just described all the images with the descriptions and the graphics and the pictures. And at the very end, he just said, this feels like Louis Farrakhan and the Million Man March. The person's just like that. And when we finally got to his session, and this was the last one we reviewed for that morning, the guy who was a skeptic said, wait a second, hold on here. You had to show him the paper. How did it happen? How could it possibly? He wrote it down. How can you know that? And I just looked at him, and he finally looked at everybody else, and he finally realized this thing is real. You really do remote view. You actually are a composite being. This person is now taking the whole. Actually, this person is now. This is his life venture. Once people have these remote viewing experiences, you can't walk away from it. You can't walk away from a course at the Farsight Voyager course, and then say, well, that was interesting. I'm going to go back to playing the piano, forgetting all this. You do go back to playing the piano, but you don't forget all that. You can't walk away from physical proof that you were able to see without your eyes something verifiable, absolutely, with some part of yourself that you didn't even know for sure existed. It's just very life transforming. And when that information becomes widely disseminated throughout the whole planet, it's planetary transforming. Finally, I'm going to start the slides, but you see the reason why it's so planetarily transforming? What's the big difference between us and the ETs? Why is it so hard for us to interact? They're already self-realized. They have technological capabilities as well as experiential capabilities. They don't have our genetic mix that blocks them from seeing it. They already know they're composite beings. We don't. When we cover this hurdle, what we find out is we're like them. We're composite beings like they are. Why is this so important from the governmental level? I'm a political scientist, remember? Folks, how long is your professional life, really? About 20 years, right? Most of your life is as childhood and then going through college, and then finally you start in the career track, and by the time you're 35, you're starting to get the job you really think might be useful, and by the time you're 40, you're there. By the time you're 55, you're starting to crank it down, and by 60, you're out of there. You're talking about retirement. You're talking 15, 20 years of active professional life when you make your biggest contribution. You can't run a galaxy on a 15 or 20-year lifespan. You're talking about evolution that takes millennia upon millennia. The government of the galaxy doesn't lie predominantly on the physical side. It's on the other side. That's why we can't interact with the ETs without knowing our composite nature. The government's not on the physical side, it's on the other side. Because you have to literally have a longer memory to know how to govern the galaxy. You can't do it as a physical being. We're just a flash in the dark. You gotta have a longer lifespan, one that doesn't ever end. And that's where the government is, the predominant aspect. There's physical components of it here, but the predominant aspect is on the other side. And so that's the real thing. All right, let's actually see some of this stuff done by students. I could really show you the stuff that I do, but then you always get into the thing of saying, well, that was Courtney Brown, that was Courtney Brown, that was Courtney Brown. I only bring the students' results up. Because the student's results is always better because you can say, well, that wasn't Courtney Brown. He taught somebody how to do that stuff. And he's got teachers now that are teaching how to do that stuff. You know, we hire these teachers. So you don't have to say, okay, I was taught by a prima donna, but nobody can teach that thing but that prima donna. There's nothing special about that. I used to teach calculus. And I used to pride myself on the fact that no matter how fear-driven those people came in with calculus, they would understand how to take a derivative and integral when they left, and they know it was a friendly thing. That's why I did nonlinear dynamical systems, why I became a popular teacher. And I used to teach at the University of Michigan. I did till Cosmic Voyage came out, then I backed out because I said, I don't want to bring the controversy with me up there. I'm protecting you guys, I'll just back out. Until the fear dies down, I'll do my own stuff at my own university and let it be for a while. And so, I was brought in for so many years to teach those nonlinear systems because I like telling people that it's not, I take the mystery out of it. You know, it's very easy to do almost anything if it's explained properly. The reason biochemistry is hard is because you're normally not explained very well. Nothing is difficult to understand if it's explained easily, and that's what we do at the Farsight Institute. There are no prima donnas. There's no special guru. There's no one person that you'll never get near. We teach it so that anybody can understand it, get results as good or better than ever been done before, and then people then can be professionalized and become a teacher themselves. And they want to be doctors. A lot of people who are doctors, midwives, chiropractors take our courses because they plan on taking the medical courses afterwards and using them in their own settings. So the point is, it's not something that's special. It's something that's common. That's the nature of us. If we were to ever say remote viewing is special, an ability, we have it, we're different from, we're separate from, we're better than, that is all wrong. The evidence of remote viewing is that we are connected. We're omnipresent. We're not separate from, we're connected to you and everybody else. My soul literally permeates yours and yours permeates mine. There's literally a connectedness, not a metaphorical connectedness, but a literal one. And that's why we teach it. All right, let's look at some of these slides. Actually, I think this microphone might be able to stretch over to this thing. How about we dim the lights a little bit? By the way, anyone hear of C SETI with Stephen Greer? He's a great guy. He does some interesting things. Well, my curiosity is always piqued with these things. And he said, go tell it on the mountain. So we went up to a mountain in Arizona one time, and I signed up for one of his things and went out there, and they were trying to bring in ships, vectoring ships with telepathy and things like that. And I said, well, that's sort of interesting. If they're willing to do that, this is before I learned remote viewing. And I said, well, let's see. If they're doing that, let's see. Let me go up to the mountain with them. And a very interesting thing, by that time I had already done the Monroe stuff. And by that time, I had already done the TM Cities program, and I was already able to perceive the non-physical stuff around me, although I never would have done that earlier in my life, but at this point, I was able to see. And I was really, really curious about that thing. And one of the most interesting things about that particular experience up on the mountain in Arizona was everybody went up to the mountain one time, and I had to do my meditation first. It took about an hour, so I said, no, that's a high priority for me, let me do it. While I was doing it, a gray actually showed up in my bedside, just like right alongside my bed, and sort of jolted me out of meditation. I said, oh, I got a visitor. I'm not supposed to do anything except keep to the program, finish it up, ignore the visitor. It's all right, just keep on going, just unstressing. But he had something to tell me because I was in a settled state. I wouldn't have sort of picked it up unless I was in a settled state. He had something to tell me that I was supposed to relate to the group. So I picked it up and I remembered it and I went back and I told him. But the interesting thing is later on that night, after I told them, a lot of people came up and thought it was an interesting thing I said. They moved them, a lot of them. But I then started to extend my consciousness out and sort of to observe to see if there were any other grays around. And I saw a gray near almost every single human that was looking up in the sky. They were looking up like this, looking for the ships. And there was a gray standing right next to them, looking straight into their heads. And I said, oh my Lord, this is almost comical. They should be looking to the side, not looking up. And it was really strange. And I said, well, that's really interesting. And then I said, well, they saw some lights and some stuff like that. Well, they had some great successes, actually, seeing some ships come down and things like that. But that particular weekend, they saw some lights and stuff like that in the hills in the middle of the night, but nothing really spectacular. But it was still a really fun outing, and I really enjoyed my camping trip. Actually, it was sort of a nice little resort that they had out there. But the point is, in the middle of the day, one day, after all this happened, I was walking from my hotel room to the meeting room, and I felt a slight tug sort of saying, now is the time to take pictures. I said, that's interesting. Now's the time to take pictures. It was in the middle of the day, 12 noon, and lunch was waiting. and it wasn't vegetarian food, so I was really suffering. And I was sort of saying, okay, well, let's do it. Took out my camera, was counting it. I said, I'll take pictures. What am I supposed to take pictures of? I said, well, I don't know. I'll just take pictures. Somebody wants me to take pictures, I'll take pictures. So I started to take my camera, and I just started to snap it like this. Snap, rewind, snap, rewind, snap, wind, snap, wind. And I just turned around like this in a circle. And sure enough, 20 pictures later, I would come a full loop. There were 2 pictures that I took that were separated by about 5 seconds. Okay? Here's the first one. This is why it's very important to actually know about the non-physical stuff. Now, this is Arizona, folks. This is a nice place to be. Notice the mountains. Notice the hills. Notice this little hole. Notice this little hole. This little hole. Okay? The cacti. You looking at it real close?
Can't see it.
Am I in your way?
Thank you.
Well, this is the next picture that was taken. Oh, you want to do that?
Show us those holes again, please.
This little hole. There's holes in the mountains. Just erosion holes.
Yeah.
Next picture. Taken 3 seconds, 5 seconds later. I'm going to focus this a little better. Let's get this focused really nice. Hold on. Oops, I may be in difficulty trying to focus this thing because I got a mic all over. Who's good with focus? Anybody got a very, no. That's the zoom.
I'm good with focus. Where do you want?
Can you go over there? There's a knob on the side. Let's get it really nicely in focus. Because you see how this is out of focus? It's a knob on the other side in the front. Now twist it so it's, yeah, you're getting it much better. Good, stop. Thank you very much. Taking about 5 seconds difference. Before I start pointing it out, what do you see? How many ships do you see? How many ships do you see? About 5 ships? No, wait a second. First of all, let me point out some things. Okay? Look at this one. See the lights are right here and down here? Notice how you can see through the ship? Notice these lights, these down here. I got to get off to the side a little bit. Notice these greens and the oranges right here. They're arranged in a row. There's another set here. They're like lines. There's also a couple over here. If I get over here, I can see better. I'm sorry, can I stand in front of you just for a minute and then I'll get out of your way? Okay. There's a ship right here. See the one on a line? Now this could actually be focused a little better, but then this will go out of focus a little. There's also another ship up here. But the point is, and this is an orange line that's connected. Anyway, this is, we'll focus this a little differently. But anyway, these lines, these dots here, oops, keep your focus where it is now.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Let's get this back in focus in the center because I want you to see these down here.
Better.
No, it's out of focus here. Let's get the center in focus. Okay, stop there. Good. All right, this is the biggest ship, of course, but you also see the manifestations over here, here. They're all in a line, in orange, green, yellow, and you get them in a line again all along here, and you get some other green ones here, and then some other random ones here, and then again you get they're all lined up over here as well. Now let me move out so people over there can see. Okay, let me see if I can repeat this on this side. This is the biggest ship, and then what we have here, they're all in a line here, and then they're in a line here, and there's another set over here in a line, and then you have another set green and orange with some yellows above over here, and you get another set over here. There's a whole bunch of ships in there. Remember they have the technology that people have known for a long time, where they apparently are there, then not there? They flick a switch and you can't see them anymore, but it doesn't mean they're not there. Okay? So if you're ever wondering why it's good to have experiences with regard to consciousness through remote viewing and things like that, it's because this is the technology, the seen and the unseen. That's what the whole game is about. Understanding their technology, their ships, their lives, their stories, their histories is all involved in the understanding of the composite nature of life, where they're on this side of the subspace physical divide, and then they're on that side of the subspace physical divide. Let's go back to the earlier picture, taken only a few seconds apart. That's why they wanted me to take the picture so quick. I just started snapping them, snap, 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 snap. No lights, nothing. They turned it off. Do you get the idea? That's why it's important. Okay, let's go forward again. Again. And now one more. Thank you, who's ever doing it. This is an interesting remote viewer sketch. This person thought for sure they were out, they were off target. And it's always good when you think you're off target, because then you're usually pretty much on target. But this person was picking up a raft. He said, oh, look, I'm just end it now. This is just misery here. You're just going to humiliate me further. All thing I'm getting is a raft hitting a rock going down the rapids, and it's got some people in the raft. A raft hitting a rock going down the rapids, people in the raft. Go ahead, just tell me it's the Eiffel Tower, right? It's the Great Wall of China. Just end it. Don't make me like a fool out of myself. Let's see the next slide. That was the target. A raft going down the rapids with a bunch of people inside hitting a rock. Let's go back. A raft in the rapids hitting a rock with a bunch of people inside the raft. Folks, it's exact. And this is just in the introductory stages that we do in remote viewing. Do you get the idea how this stuff works? The only thing that person was told was a random number that was generated from a random number table just seconds before the session started. That's all. What is the probability of him being able to describe that, given the nature of the target? It's basically zero. It's so small. It's right off of any statistical chart. Let's go forward again. Okay, let's go forward again. Well, this particular viewer was sent to Pompeii, the volcanic destruction event of Pompeii. And, you know, different people are different quality drawers, so you have to, you know, excuse things. But this person, in addition to describing all types of things about a mountain and lava falling all over the place and burning a city and people running and panic and skin being burned off, the flesh being burned off the bones, and she also found a person in a boat carrying things with hot molten rocks and fire falling upon the person. And then the next slide. Well, eventually the person got tossed into the water and the boat was starting to collapse and the stuff was starting to cause pandemonium. And then the next slide. Finally, the person was dead. As the session continued, she recorded everything. The person was dead. The material was just sunk. The boat was sunk. There was steam, chaos, boiling water, boiling rocks, rocks boiling the water, falling into the place all over the place. And she described the horror scene. Exactly. And then after the scene was over, she said, okay, what was that? The White House, right? Because she didn't know what the target was. She just went through the procedures, stuck to the procedures. And we said, that was Pompeii, the nuclear destruction, the volcanic destruction event. And she said, it was? You know what's interesting about remote viewing? Because if you send another remote viewer back, and the person's good, they've been through the courses and they've actually, you know, they've been good, they've become really good at it. They'll not only just, even an amateur, even a beginner will pick up the volcano stuff, but a professional will also, if they poke around long enough, find another remote viewer that's looking at the scene. Because it's a subspace being, right? You're subspace beings. And you'll eventually find this woman looking at the boat being thrown into the sea, looking at the lava coming in, she's wondering, she's all confused, what's going on, and she's looking around and trying to eventually find that person. What does that mean? That means that time really, really does not exist. It's not a New Age metaphor. It really does not exist. That means that when you go to remote view something, you become part of the scene. This person, this woman, is actually now part of the volcanic destruction event of Pompeii. And if someone else remote views it back there, they'll find her looking at it. The military guys were the first people to discover that. Actually, one of the military guys was remote viewing a scene that Ingo Swann had already done a few years earlier. And this military guy was sent back to that same spot. And after he completely described the scene exactly as Ingo Swann had described it, he said, and he never knew that Ingo Swann was sent to that target ever. He said, but there's one thing that's really weird about this target. Eagle Swan standing behind me. You become part of the scene. Okay? So time really doesn't exist. So then what is time? Time is a limitation of our perception. Remember we were masters of limitation? It is like you're driving by in a car or in a train and you're looking out the window and you're moving fast and everything that passes you by, you see. But just because you don't see it anymore because you passed it, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist anymore. Just means you can't see it. Time is a limitation of our perception. But it means that there is nothing but the here and now. We only have the current. That means everything that ever did happen still exists. It's not that you're viewing a movie of it. You're actually watching it happen. And everything that happens in the future is happening now. There is no past, present, and future. There is only the here and the now. That is why we now know that it is possible for the future to interact with the past. And we do not evolve linearly, but non-linearly. It's like bread being kneaded over and over again. The entire of creation evolves simultaneously, past, present, and future. That's why it's very important for you to realize that when you look up and you see a flying saucer shoot by, you should never be afraid of it. It may be you flying it. Past, present, and future does not exist. It is only a limitation of perception. Well, Pompeii was witnessed by it. We have had situations where we have had people just break down in classes. Very rarely. We try not to have that happen. But sometimes when we send them into someplace like Nagasaki, for example, we've had people go into Nagasaki. We send the whole class there sometimes. Never when they know it. Different places, different times, different classes, get different targets all the time. But we have had classes where we send everybody into Nagasaki, and at the end of the session, we just have a couple of people crying. we say, I'm sorry. But in those special cases, normally we always send people to the center of the target, get all the rich information out. And then if we have to go back out to see where we were, we send them 5 miles to the west or 5 miles to the east. But with training targets like that, we have in the past sent people 5 miles out or to the west just to see it first. So they can see the mushroom cloud, they can do things like that. Or if it's a volcano, so they can see the volcano. Or if it's a big spaceship that has some type of a big meaning to see it. You can never know when we'll send you 5 miles out first, because there's various reasons for doing that in many cases. But in Nagasaki, for example, we sent the people out 5 miles out first because we wanted them to see the airplane going in. We wanted them to see the volcano. We wanted them to see not the volcano, the atomic blast. And then we sent them into the site. And when they go into the site, the emotional experience is often so terrible when you see the flesh burning right off the bones of the people. That's something, some people just have to stop the session. And had we started them first by sending them right to the center, they would have seen all that first and they would have ended the session, and we never would have found out where we were with the good sketch of the mountains and the river and the sea, the coastline, and so on like that. So that's that's something that it's very interesting how we handle these particular sessions. There are many reasons why we send them 5 miles out first, for many different targets, not just dealing with bombs or anything, sometimes with very peaceful events. For example, if there's a really happy event going on, a really extraordinary thing, we don't want them to find out what the target is by sending them right into it. All the emotions will give all types of impressions, and they may even figure out what the target is. So we get them back out first before they go in. Okay, when we did the flight 800 stuff with TWA, when we sent a professional in, we didn't send them right into the bomb because we didn't send them right into the exploding ship because we knew that within 10 minutes of the session, that person would be knowing it was flight TWA, flight 800. So we went after the mechanisms by which the thing was exploded first. And then we found out, later in the session, let them go right to the plane and said, whoa, this is a plane crashing. This is flight 800. We have all this stuff up on the internet, by the way. You want to see the sketches? The whole thing? It's all there. Click of a mouse, you're there. Next scene. Well, this person was one of those other people that said, oh, just end my misery. All I'm seeing is a battleship, World War II battleship. And there's 2 people that were very important to this particular target, he says. And I don't know what this is all about, but they were discussing battle plans, and one was sort of crafty and cunning, and the other one was being sort of sly and not wanting to commit. And this person was sort of hesitating, and this person was actually saying, no, you got to plan a battle. This person was actually trying to. And I said, well, what's this up here? And he says, well, I didn't see any helicopter, but I felt the concept of rescue all over the place. Rescue, rescue. So I just drew a helicopter up there to capture the idea of rescue. I didn't see a helicopter, but I felt rescue all over the place. And then he looked at me and he says, why don't you just end this? Just tell me what the target was. What was this target? This was the White House, right? Or this was what? This was Los Angeles Beach, Monterey, California. Is that what it was? And I said, okay, here's the target. Next slide. That was the target. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Prime Minister Winston Churchill meeting on a ship. It was a World War II battleship somewhere in the North Atlantic in August of 1941, about 5 months before Pearl Harbor, to discuss the war aims and to set up the Atlantic Charter. It was to prepare for the U.S. entry into the war, and Churchill was trying to convince Roosevelt to enter now. I mean, Britain was being bombed. France was gone. And Roosevelt was saying, no, we can't do a situation like World War I when Woodrow Wilson led us into a war that the American populace was not ready for and not committed to. We have to wait for an event. We have to wait for some incident. And they were talking about an incident that they expected to happen in the Pacific arena. But they had to wait till something big happened so the American populace would be committed. And this is when they decided to do the Lend-Lease program, where the Americans would start to change their factories from automobile factories to tank and other ammunition type factories, so that they could then sell the ammunition and tanks and everything else to the Brits, and thereby starting to convert our economy over to a wartime economy before the actual war started. So this is the arrangement, this is the time it happened. And it was these two guys talking on a World War II battleship, exactly what the picture said. Let's go back one more time. That was the target. It was World War II battleship, and there was Winston Churchill and FDR talking about the concept of rescue.
What's the fish?
He was just sort of saying, he just drew that at the end because the session went on so long that he didn't have anything more to write, so he just put a fish in there. It was almost like a doodle. Okay, let's go forward again. Again, there you see the soldiers in the back. Now this person, she was sent to a target was the largest pyramid of Egypt, period of construction. And we were actually interested to find out how, this is a trainee who was sent in, that we were interested to find out how the pyramids were built. And that's what the reason for this session was. And she came in with a lot of interesting stuff. She found a lot of parallel lines that seemed like almost logs lying flat. She didn't have any place to put them, so she just put them up here on the paper. But they were like logs, like bearings rolling flat. And then the pyramid was being, you can see obviously she got the target, right? She got the pyramid, but then she said, but there was land that was being piled up here. And the interpretation of what the stuff, what happened based on the rest of the stuff that was in the session, there's a lot of words that come across, not just pictures. I just show you the pictures because they're so easy to describe in a session like this. But the information seemed to be suggesting that what was happening was that the pyramids were built up layer upon layer, that a first layer would be built up here with big stones being rolled on logs like bearings. And then once that layer of these big stones was put in place, land would be piled up around the pyramid, especially on one side. It would be piled up. You basically bury that level of the pyramid. And then you roll more logs and build up the next level. And you roll more stones on top of the logs and build up the next level. And then bury that. And so really what you're doing is you're just raising the land level as you're building the pyramid up. And what happens when you finally finish the top? You have a buried pyramid. And how do you get the pyramid back? You dig it up. You dig up the pyramid and it's there, freestanding. And that's what seemed to come out of that session. I've never heard that theory before in terms of construction. And when it came out of that session, I said, that's fascinating. We'd like to do a whole bunch of sessions on that to see if it in fact is the correct interpretation of all that. Anyway, let's go to the next slide. She was getting the impression of pyramids so much, it was just like driving into her consciousness. That's all she could, was just coming over. So you can see how strong that impression was, how many times she had to draw it over and over and over and over and over and over, because it was just pounding. Remote viewing impressions sometimes are not so subtle. She just had to pound in their pyramids. She was feeling confused and frustrated, but she was seeing pyramids, more frustration, and she was saying Cairo. And the last thing she wrote was, sort of like Martians as well. Of course, Cairo, the word Cairo means Mars. pyramids. Target was largest pyramid of Egypt, period of construction. Why don't we have the next slide? Well, some people's drawing abilities are less than others, but this was the Great Sphinx of Egypt. Yeah, it's a big word. Well, he drew something. He didn't know what it was, but it was something that had eyes and was sort of like a beak, and there was something in the pyramid right behind it. Notice this type of thing, like a UFO ship. We never investigated that thoroughly, but we noted it. Anyway, let's go to the next slide. Later on in the session, he was more bilocated at the site. He was more closer contact with the target. And he drew a little better picture of the Sphinx with the pyramid right behind it. And if you stand in front of the Sphinx, that's exactly what you see. You see the Sphinx here? That's not a bad picture for government work. And then the Sphinx, and then the pyramid by the wrong side, on the right-hand side. One of the theories is that there may be another pyramid inside the pyramid, that the Great Cheops, so the Great Pyramid, might actually be built on top of another one inside it, literally new layers. So we were really fascinated to see this particular drawing. This is all done by a trainee in that first week. So this is very, you can see that this stuff is very profound. The people don't leave that week unaffected. All right, the next slide. Well, actually, this is the same remote viewer that did the Roosevelt and Churchill thing. When we least expected it, we slipped them a very challenging target. Gray's consciousness. Normally we don't do that, but this guy was doing so great, we said, well, what the heck? We'll find it out, Gray's consciousness. And, he had no idea what was going to happen. He didn't know what the target was going to be. No idea at all. He didn't know if we were going to send him to a World War II battlecruiser or anything. He immediately picked up a gray ship with multiple layers and a central power source with each one of these lines is a person with lots of beings, and he was picking up that the central power source was humming, making a sound. And he was probing all around it to see if it could possibly really be real. He was probing it to see, and all he was getting is vacuum here and a ship with the central power source, many layers, a big complex ship. Then he went on in the session. Let's get the next slide. As he went on in the session, he noticed a couple things, that the Greys were aware of him remote viewing. And not only were they aware of him, but he was actually picking up a collective consciousness of these beings. And he drew this collective consciousness, he represented it as one picture, one being. But it wasn't representing one person. It was the collective consciousness of the whole group. And that was living in these ships. And he got the flavor that they were transmitting. He got the clear sense that they were transmitting. And by the way, throughout all of this, he had no idea what the target was. He was it was consistent from front to back. The whole session was just like this. That they were transmitting something to Earth, noticed to all of Earth. And then he drew the United States in Atlanta, where he was at the Farsight Institute. And that they were transmitting something, trying to send a message to all of Earth. Their consciousness was trying to communicate. And he also perceived a sense of humor. Because not only did he note that they knew that he was remote viewing, they were aware of his remote viewing. They were also aware that he was picking up the actual message, and they threw in a little bit of humor. They overlaid the actual remote viewing session with Star Trek music. He just said that they were putting it on top. And in Cosmic Voyage, my book, Cosmic Voyage, a scientific discovery of extraterrestrials visiting Earth, I have a chapter just on the Star Trek connection. They've actually been planting a lot of information in some, not all, in some TV series. And Star Trek, especially the Next Generation, had a lot of implanted information in terms of trying to get us used to these new ideas. The whole idea of the Federation and things like that. Many species, things like that. Anyway, so that was and then after the whole session, he looked at us and he said, okay, tell me again, what was the session? Was that the Eiffel Tower this time? You're always telling me the Eiffel Tower is coming. Was that it this time? And he said, no, it was Gray's consciousness. He hit it 100%. Okay.
What's the definition of the target? Some cases you showed an image, a picture with some text.
Sometimes in the beginning of training, we use pictures because
So what is it here? Just
this is the words, Gray's / consciousness. It was a very advanced target, but this guy was doing so well, we just hit him with it.
Now, the question is a random number associated with that text? But who knows it's Gray's consciousness?
Only the monitor, or if it's a double blind session, not even the monitor. The random number is taken from a random number table literally minutes before the session starts.
But how's the connection made between Gray's consciousness and the random number?
The monitor writes down on a piece of paper, Gray/consciousness. And then we take a little yellow stickum like this and write the random number down that we get on the random number table at that same moment. We just look at a table and look at a number we never used before. We write it down. We take the stickum, we stick it onto the piece of paper that says Gray's consciousness. We stick it into a manila envelope, seal it, put it down, and don't look at it till the end of the session.
Okay, so if it's not a double blind, why don't you think that he reads the monitor's mind?
We're not even looking at one paranormal experience to explain another paranormal experience. It does happen we get the same results with double blind. We have some double blind sessions up on the internet site. But why don't we use double blinds during training all the time? Because we're not in a testing mode. We know how this thing works. We use double blinds only when we really want absolute perfect information, and also when we just want to play. Sometimes we just do double blinds because it's fun. We get the same results. But why do we like blind, what I call type 4 data, where the monitor knows? If the monitor knows what the target is, the monitor then can pick the right procedures to use for that particular target.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of optional procedures. Certain locational diagrams, for example, there's a map locational diagram where you locate things on the earth, like in the United States. Gray's consciousness, if the monitor knows the target, they're not going to use that procedure. You know what I mean? If the monitor doesn't, the monitor may actually come out with saying, well, let's use a map of the United States, let's see where that is. And it wouldn't make sense in that particular setting. So there are many optional procedures, some of which are useful and some of which are not useful for a particular target. So a type 4 situation where the monitor knows the target and the viewer doesn't, it allows the monitor to plan the session a little better, to get the richest body of information out. We do double blind sessions when we do them just for fun, just for the heck of it.
Have you ever investigated any of the people or events in any of the world religions?
World religions? Yeah, we do Jesus not quite regularly, actually. He's very supportive. He's very not only supportive, but very cooperative with blind sessions. He shows up all the time. He's not dead because you're not going to be dead when you die. And so anybody that did exist still exists. So the real question is he going to participate in the session? And he's been very, very helpful. Every time we send somebody, they've never missed. They always nail it on the end. Hey, this dude says he's Jesus. What do you want me to do now? First time that ever happened with me and the military monitor, the guy had to hang up the phone because he said, we have to end the session now. I just don't know what to do anymore. And he told me the target and just ended it. He got so flustered. It's like you pick up the phone and you dial Jesus, and the remote viewer is the phone. And the remote viewer doesn't know the target, and then Jesus picks up on the other side. He says, hi, you want to talk? The monitor didn't know what to do. So it was but we know now what to do, so that's sort of beyond the thing. But the point is that we've done Moses, we've done Abraham, we've done the sacrifice of Abraham, and the Isaac Abraham sacrifice thing in the Bible, there was an intervention and it stopped it. We've done that. That actually occurred, and there was a big subspace being that's there that actually stopped the thing. We've done Moses crossing the Red Sea. That's on the internet. A lot of these things virtually all of these things are on the internet. You want to see these results with the sketches and everything, they're there. Click with the mouse, it's for free, you'll see it. Yeah, we do a lot of religious figures. We've done Buddha. By the way, the big question about somebody who used to live, the big question then is, what is their job description now? I mean, they're not unemployed. They're going to do something, right? I mean, they can't twiddle their thumbs in each peach cobbler the rest of eternity. Buddha, we found out, actually works on the Galactic Federation Council. That's no joke. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. He's got a really great sense of humor. I mean, he had to do something. That's his job.
How about ancient civilizations like Lemurian or Atlantis?
Atlantis is really interesting too. That's in the pile of yet to do targets. You want to learn how to remote view? You can make that your project.
I'd be delighted.
Yeah, yeah, seriously, go ahead.
What, if anything, have you learned about the Kennedy assassination?
It's up on the internet. Go click on it. Yeah. We haven't resolved the whole thing. We have some stuff done by trainees on the Kennedy thing, but we haven't, that's not a project of ours. So we haven't resolved, was there anyone else on the grassy knoll or anything like that. There's a big difference between one session and a project. The project is where you dedicate a lot of professional resources to resolve certain things. We've done, Cosmic Voyage is a project. The sessions that we've sent up so far are just, really interesting student sessions that are up there on the internet. Tons of them, though. We are actually starting up a new nonprofit called Farsight Research, Inc., and that is going to be dedicated just to projects. We now have a whole bunch of professional viewers waiting for stuff to do, a lot of teachers coming in. We now have all the resources to do these projects. So we're going to be hiring a person who's the project manager, and it'll literally have just projects. So you have what we did with Cosmic Voyage, we're going to repeat with lots of these other interesting topics. Go ahead, we'll answer a couple more questions.
When was the Great Pyramid built?
Oh, you mean like, you're talking about the controversy of when it was built, whether it was built 10,000 years ago at a different climate? Like this is the stuff that like Bill Cody's been talking about with his films, the Mysteries of Man. We have interesting information that does seem to suggest that there was climatic differences, a lot of water around the pyramids. Whether it was the Nile being diverted or a lot of climatic differences, we still pick up desert though. So we don't really know. Whenever we look through the Sphinx, we do find pyramids behind it. And we actually were thinking that maybe we get the Sphinx without pyramids, and then the pyramids were added later. So we're not really sure, actually. We haven't resolved that. We've only sent trainees to those targets. We haven't made a project of that. That's another one of those things that we could resolve with a project, but we haven't done yet. Go ahead, yeah.
Because the diagram, the eyes are reptilian, they are not the eyes of a ray.
That's the artist's capability. That's not a reptile. That's a.
But how do you know that? Why should you say that?
Well, the person had very intimate target contact with that, and there was lots of verbal descriptions as well of the whole site, of the whole session, and the words were all over grays. There was no reptile anything in there. And that was just the best picture he could do. I mean, the guy was not a Michelangelo. That was.
But why put an eye like that when the eye, most people report the eyes of the gray as being totally opaque and not visible.
That was the best he could do. I mean, you should see some of my sketches. They're far worse. I mean, honestly, you have to understand, I only show you a few sketches. I don't show, the session's going for like 20 pages or more. You're getting 2 pages out of 20.
Is there companion text on the website in addition to the pictures such as you're describing?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, we describe everything. Yeah.
What have you learned about Flight 800?
Yeah.
Why don't you click on that on the website? There's more coming too. We got lots more sessions. That's something that's very interesting. That'll drive you to the computer faster if I don't tell you. Go ahead.
I just want to ask you a very profound question. If we know the future, and why is there a big show as to what may happen in the future as far as the ETs relocating to Earth?
Excellent question.
And then if the Earth is so overpopulated as we perceive it to be, is it truly that way? And what will we have to do to accommodate?
Well, in Cosmic Voyage, I do explain about the future that we're heading towards. It's not really rosy if you go out 75 years. About the year 2075, we start entering a Mad Max scenario, where you're talking about people going down into bunkers, most of everybody having to slug it out on the top, most of the population dies off. It's just population out of control, burning ourselves off the planet. But remember, nobody really dies. It's just we go through a big learning experience, and we come out of it 300, 400 years later, very much wiser as a choice. However, with regard to the future, we have to understand that the future is probabilistic, not deterministic. We really know that now. We are on a timeline, but because we can remote view the future, we can change the timeline we're on. And if you want to hear about this from a scientist, go listen to Professor John Russell on our website, retired professor of nuclear engineering, PhD in physics. He's former professor from Georgia Institute of Technology, where he literally talks in the best interview that I've ever heard on this subject about how multiple timelines work and what we know about time and what we don't know about time. basically, if you change the future, that future still exists that you changed, but it goes off on its own merry way. You then start a new timeline and go off on a different way. It's fascinating.
So actually changing the past could be cataclysmic to the future, but it's on a different timeline. So there's many timelines.
There's many, perhaps a continuum of timelines. And one of the things that you have to see when you see future people come back, like future humans coming back, or even the future greys coming back, sometimes they could be just interested in guaranteeing their own manifestation, their own survival. They just want to make sure nothing goes wrong. They want to stay in the timeline. All sorts of things like that happen. Yeah.
If the Greys know when they're being remote viewed,
Yeah.
and they can send information to humans,
Yeah.
how do we know whether they're sending true or false pictures?
That's a very good question. In the beginning, when we used to remote view abductions, they used to block it all the time. No remote viewer could remote view an abduction for the longest time, until 1 month after John Mack's book on abductions came out. 1 month after that book came out, that was the first book where they were given a legitimate fair shake in terms of being portrayed, relatively benignly, without sort of being tossed at. If you look at other books, you see them, they're collaborating with the CIA and the Nazis combined, sucking glandular secretions. I mean, it's awful. And finally, when John Mack's book came out, they were given a fair deal. He explained in eloquent prose the beauty of their civilization as well. And 1 month after that book came out, all prohibitions for remote viewing abductions were dropped, and we could see anything.
But how do we know if we're
Now,
sending
okay,
a true picture?
when we were blocked, we knew we were blocked. We knew we were not seeing the right target. We knew that something was being sent in instead. But it was always symbolic, so they do have the technological capability to block remote viewing. So you have to then say, would they have the capability of completely deceiving me? And for them to be an evil race and things like that. Well, we have remote viewed the Galactic Federation headquarters, Jesus, Moses, all these beings that no longer are physical, but are, others, but are very powerful beings out there. Okay, now, if the Greys have this ability, you have to assume that the rest of the galaxy and all the great spiritual beings that have ever had contact with humans are letting them do it and letting them, interfere with the process of us trying to contact them as well. And I just don't think that capability exists. I don't think that the Greys are more powerful than the rest of the galaxy. So if we legitimately try to see the rest of the galaxy and accurately pick up the stuff using the same technology that we accurately remote view anything else, we then have to say, is all of it an overlay that the Greys are devising? Well, I basically then have to say, well, with Buddha on the Galactic Federation headquarters, would he allow it to happen? That we would be doing? Or would Jesus allow it to happen? And then the other thing I have to say is, whenever there has been a blockage, we have found out. We have known. But there's evidence. The remote viewing session doesn't go the way it's supposed to go. At the end of the session, we know something went wrong. And then it happens repeatedly. So we actually know when things like that occur.
But it could be part of our learning curve that we have to learn how to discriminate among the images we receive, even in remote viewing.
We have only 2 examples ever of us having a false image put in front of us. That was the abductions before John Mack's book came out, and there was a energy power source that the military people went after. They discovered off planet that was extremely powerful, and they tried to actually find out how it worked. And they were able to see the power source and the consequences of using that particular power source because the entire planet blew up. And then they were blocked. They couldn't get back to it. They couldn't get any of the technological download from it. So those are the only 2 instances we ever have on record ever of being blocked. So that's the best answer I can give.
It's about 11:30.
Yeah, so I'll take one more question and that's it. In the back?
Can this ability be used destructively, or is there some sort of a moral control built in?
Remember what the old biblical stuff said? As above, so below, or as below, so above? We're all subspace beings and we're just using our subspace aspect to remote view. So I see no particular reason why it could not be used for good and bad. That is one of the reasons why the Farsight Institute is there. Because it was originally developed by the military. for purposes of military interest, espionage, military attacks, things like that. And it involves evolution, consciousness, the future of humanity. And one of the reasons I've come out so strongly with regard to the Far Side Institute, putting so much resources into it, is because the person or the ideas that capture the attention of the masses first captures the territory first. And it's either going to be the next generation of kids coming up looking at remote viewing as an ability to be gained, to be better than, different from other people, so they can be the next generation of Power Rangers, or we will have the opposite. We will have remote viewing being the sexiest thing in town because we want to all become galactic citizens. You know, participants in the larger community of life, where it is sexy to actually learn how to close your eyes and meditate and do yogic flying, where it is sexy to actually learn how to be a siddha, where it is sexy to actually learn how to be a remote viewer, and to know about the composite nature of life and the beauty of all life out there. And that is better and sexier and faster and greater and cooler and niftier than being a Power Ranger. So that's the stakes. The reason for Cosmic Voyage, bottom line, is to use remote viewing for the most altruistic of purposes, because that captures the philosophical territory for the next generation of kids that's coming up. So then there's a real competition for their minds, for the good versus for the bad. For the good is the way we vote at the Far Side Institute, and that's where all the efforts are being done. There's lots of questions. Honestly, this could go on as they do in Far Side Institute classes until the wee hours of the morning. We must sleep. I have to also get up at 4 o'clock, meditate, and be out to get an airplane at 5:15 so I can be with the Far Side teachers, the class tomorrow morning. So I have to call it quits. You've been a wonderful group, and it's been a great honor for you to come here and listen to these words. I hope it's been of some use.